Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Maneuver Life Radio. I am Dean. This is my friend Tony, and we've got a great episode for you today. I think we had a really good conversation, especially for the first hour. We talked about how to identify, gain, and maintain friendships that are valuable to you as somebody who's trying to lock in yourself, right? So, how do you surround yourself with these people? What does it even mean to identify it? Where do you start personally? And we really get into the fine details. So, if you're a thinker, you're going to gain a lot of principles that you can live by that are going to help you, hopefully, if you're a young guy, help you identify friendships that are going to push you forward and ultimately escape those friendships that are really just going to drag you down. And how to know the difference. So that's the first hour. After that, we get into some Reddit questions. The infinite content farm over there at Reddit. We spent first question we had was there was a girl actually asked a question. It was directed towards men, so we thought we'd take it on. Um, she says, "Do men not believe in being friends with women? Is that true?" So we had a good conversation about that, about why that is the case for the most part, and what that means for you as a guy. Second question, we had a gentleman who had a 3-year-old daughter that he thought was his, and he finds out it is not. So he's with his ex, and paternity test is done, and turns out he's not the father. So we had a conversation about how to handle that. This specific conversation, this specific question, was kind of a tough one. But the third one we got into, there was a guy who found out that his girlfriend was somebody's mistress in the past. Okay, and she knew about this, and he wanted to know what to do about it. Her behavior during this situation was pretty awful, and we had a pretty good conversation about that and why, as a man, you need both sexual discipline and self-esteem. So we covered both of those things. And yeah, thanks for clicking on the video. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
All right. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Maneuver Life Radio. We do have a little bit of a topic today about gaining and maintaining and vetting relationships. This is both with women, men, friends, romantic relationships, business partners, etc. So I'll kick it over to Dean for a little bit of an introduction on the topic, but we got a lot of things to discuss today. We're going to go over some stuff too. So, yeah, vetting and maintaining. What do you think
Yeah.
about that whole
So
process?
so I wanted to talk about um, what it looks like to have people around you who are as committed to the lock-in as you are, right? And whether it's men or women, it's mostly going to be men.
Right.
Let's be honest. Most of the time, there are women who are locked in, but you know, the women who are locked in. I mean, first of all, I don't really think you'd want to date a woman like that. I mean, maybe you would. We could talk about that, but
And
yeah,
that's even a
I'll
good
start with men.
to
So
interrupt you real quick. That's even a good point for a later episode. What it means to be locked in the frame of what your biological sex is, right? I mean, that could look different for some
yeah,
or
that's
your
a good
stage in
point.
life even. That could look different for somebody who's
Yeah, that's
40 with kids. Like that's a different lock in than Sam Sulek's little
right.
brother that's
Right.
19 or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Exactly, Sam Sulek. Yeah, that's a great point. So anyway, I guess it goes like this. You're going to meet a lot of people in your life. You're going to make a lot of friends. You probably already have a bunch of friends, maybe from high school, maybe from college or whatever. And you love these guys, and probably the majority of them, maybe even the vast majority of them, are not locked in. They don't even know what that means, right? We've done a whole episode on what it means personally to be locked in, but how can you really identify somebody else? Because here's the thing, even somebody who is locked in, unless they're like elite level discipline and motivation, that guy's probably going to leave you in the dust by
right,
himself, and he
right.
doesn't really. It doesn't matter whether you're in it with him or not. Um, so if you're one of those guys, I mean, congratulations. But I'm probably speaking to the majority of us who are like, you have to try hard. You have to think hard about it. You have to try hard. You have to strategize and like figure out how to fucking grab yourself by the scruff of the neck and like force yourself to do things. So it's not. I mean, somebody you may meet somebody who's like locked in or on the journey towards it, and they stumble a lot. They go back and forth. I feel like right now. I'm kind of talking about myself. So I'm thinking about this like I know I'm doing better than like probably most guys
Right.
around my age in terms of just moving towards goals, but feel like I have so much more that I could be doing, And I would want to be very forgiving towards a different guy who I saw making the effort. And I guess maybe that's the key right there. Are they really making the effort? Because I think you talk to 100% of people, they're all going to say, yeah, or not, maybe not all, 95% are going to say, I have X and Y goals and I really want to meet them. And if you go even a little bit into that, like, what are you doing to meet those goals?
Right.
They're just going to kind of, there's well, and that's, I need to do this before I can do that. I
Hmm.
need X, Y, and Z before I can move forward. Those types of people will drag you down, right? And it's not even like you have to rely on others, because you really don't. Like, if you're a man, I mean, it's, you should make the effort to network, and that's kind of why we're having this kind of conversation right here, so you can figure that out. But regardless of whether you succeed in making friends who are just as dedicated as you can still proceed. So what do I mean by they'll drag you down? Well, it's like this negative energy, right? Like, if you know somebody who's constantly saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that," and then they just don't do it, you start to lose respect for them. And it becomes very difficult to maintain like a friendly, happy relationship with someone when they're constantly letting you down in that way. Because, well, I mean, it should just be obvious, right? Like, you can't trust them to do what they say they're going to do. Like, even something as simple as like, hey, we're going to hang out this day, and the day comes and they just ghost you, or let's say they cancel like an hour beforehand, right? And you're like, damn, I made these plans, I could have done something else, and now you're just leaving. And like that, just that's a little example, but all of those things will build up and build up. It will cause you to lose respect. It will cause you to lose. Uh, it just become more difficult to be friendly to them, and then you're battling that every time you see them, right? Which is like a mood ruiner. Like, it
Right.
just kills your. I got to interact with this person who's letting me down. Yeah, okay, they said sorry, and like I'm willing to forgive them because I like this person. Maybe I even love this person, but they're constantly letting you down like that, and it just weighs on you emotionally. So, what do you even do in a situation like that? Let me ask you that. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think of that, and how do you even handle it?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because, and I'm going to answer your question, but I want to kind of go back to what you said originally. And you said that there are people that are not locked in 100%, but they're on the path of locking in. And then there are those who don't even understand the concept of locking in. And you got to differentiate that because you mentioned yourself, like you're not as locked in as like Jocko Willink and stuff of the world. And they might not
Right.
even give you the time of day, which is good. They probably have a system, which we're going to explain today is they have a system to vet people that works. And we're going to give that to you guys.
Yeah.
Not their level, but it's what they started with for people like those guys. And so yeah, to answer your question, what do you do in that situation? It really is a sad situation, but you do have to decide: is this person worth my time and energy and my even my emotional? People call this emotional tax. Like, are they worth my emotional tax? No, they might not be, but
Yeah.
in some cases they might be. But you got to ask yourself that question. You will know. And yeah, is this somebody that when you make plans to do something that's you have to think. Let's say you make plans with him on Friday and say, hey, we're gonna go to the grocery store. We're gonna go whatever. We're gonna go for a walk. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And you make plans for that Friday. And is this the kind of person where on Wednesday rolls around and you have to say, hey man, remember Friday? And Thursday comes up, hey, are we still on for Friday? And then Friday morning you have to, hey, so just so you know, double check, are we triple confirming that we're good to go for later today?
Yeah.
If it's that type of
Yeah.
person, I mean, you may want to just drop the friendship at that point, or lower it back to a point where you don't have to commit to that stuff because these types of people are always going to be that requiring that level of maintenance, and there are people out there that don't need that, and you know that. I know that the audience I'm
Yeah.
talking to, they know that because they have bosses, they have CEOs, they have jobs and stuff, and those when you go to work, you're not questionably going to show up at 9 a.m. Like, you're there. If you're not there at 9 a.m. consistently, like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
gone, and somebody else will take your spot. So it's sort of like that in some ways, but that sets the tone. As you were saying, as Dean was saying earlier, that sets the tone for the whole friendship, and like it allows people to sort of lower the expectation of themselves around you, which makes you lower your expectation of yourself around them, which can bleed into other
Yeah.
aspects of your life. So it can really impinge on the locking in process. But to
Yeah.
flip a question
That's a
back to
great
you,
point.
actually, I was thinking about this when you were talking about the folks with the second order desires of locking in. What does it look like for you? Let's say you're 25 years of age, 26 years of age, whatever, and you're at the gym or something. Like, you have a hobby where you go to the gym a couple times a week, and you've got a guy who's kind of there, he's the same hours as you, right? and then after about a month, you kind of see him and you get to know his name because maybe you need a spot for the bench, and you say, "Hey, what's up, man? I'm Dean. Hey, can you spot me real quick?" And then he spots you. You get into like a little 5 minute little chit chat. Hey, man, like what kind of shoes are those? Oh yeah, da da da, such and such. So like that's the point of a kind of the beginning of something that could be great or whatever. But what is your
Yeah.
vetting process on that kind of person where you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna get this guy's phone number. We're gonna like link up another time, or maybe next time I see him at the gym, like let's link up again, whatever. Like how do
Yeah.
you? Yeah, exactly. What's your vetting process for that kind of situation?
So that's a good avenue to go down because there's definitely and I think the whole point of this conversation, of course, is cultivating like good, meaningful, useful friendships and relationships in your life, right? So let's say I met somebody, this guy at the gym, right? Now, number one, he's at the gym already, right? So that's like I'm putting myself in a place where I'm very likely to meet other people who are at least locked in on this particular aspect. Maybe other things in their life they're not doing anything, but at least they're here. They're taking care of their physical health. They're trying to get after it in the gym. So there's already like a level up in terms of I know this person's doing something, right? So I'm more willing to sort of commit to the friendship early on, like making effort to contact this person, making effort to set up meetings or do stuff and talk about meaningful things. So that's number one is they have a higher baseline, which means I'm going to make more effort. For me, somebody at the bar it happens all the time. You go to a bar, you get somebody's phone number, you never text them because it's just like whatever, and I forget about you the next day, or I was just drunk and I don't really care anymore. But with these types of relationships, I think you have to take the setting that you met them in into account number one. So you meet somebody at the gym, at the library, at school, at work, and you see they're a hard worker. Those kinds of things you should immediately think, okay, this is somebody I should at least probe, get to know more, and I'm going to make more effort. So that's number one. Number two, I would say this: the only way, of course, is really to get to know them. You have to talk to them. You have to find out what their values are, what their goals are, and what they're doing to pursue those goals. Now, it's not an interview, right? This is not like that. This is a friendship that you're trying to form. This is a connection you're trying to form. So you just sort of naturally get to know them. You're going to find these things out, right? Like you talk about whatever's on your mind, you're going to share with them, and they're going to do the reverse. Now, if you're locked in, you're going to be talking about the things you're doing, the job you're working on, the goals you have, etc. And then they're going to hopefully respond in kind, and then you kind of get a better sense of what you two have in common. If there's anything you can pursue together, do you have complementary skills, things like that, and then from there, it's just going to I think you can take it from there at that point, right? Like let's say, for example, I'm a writer, right? So I do a lot of copywriting. If I meet let's say somebody who works in marketing, right? Now it's like, well, I met you at the gym. I know you're locked in there. You do marketing, which is a complementary skill directly to what I have. So now it's like there's two things going on, and it's like I'm even more invested. So I'm going to make even more effort to try to make this friendship work. And that's going to bring the best out of me. Because if I really want to work with this person, I'm going to, let's say we set up a project together, I'm going to make sure I follow through, right? Because I care about this person's respect now. I care about earning their trust so that we can continue to work together going forward. And I think another important thing is that you need to see that that's being reciprocated, right? Because you may get this far and then you set up something to do together and they don't follow through. And then you're like, okay, I could see how this kind of person is. So that, I guess, I have another follow up question for you then. I'll
Yeah,
kick it
yeah.
back again.
Kick it back over.
So then let's say you get that far. How much grace are you giving in this for this person, right? This person has shown at least demonstrated some level of commitment and get after it, but
Right.
they've like let you down. So where are you going with that one?
Yeah, so if the gentleman, the individual that approaches me at the gym, or I approach him, whatever, he's spotting me or whatever, and we link up, and I get his phone number, we link up and say, hey, let's go lift again, like maybe next Tuesday, let's lift weights again. It depends on the level of good faith that he's operating under. If let's say I do ask him, or he asks me, hey, next Tuesday or this Tuesday, I'm doing like a big chest day, like I need to do bench. Are you going to be there? Maybe we could spot each other. And I say like, if I say yes, I'll be there, whatever, I'll be there. 99% of the time I'll be there. If he's not there, the first time or whatever, like or any time, I'm gonna be a little bit disappointed, obviously, because like I had to change my schedule around to make sure I was there. Because if I go to the gym, I'm not
Yeah.
specifically showing up at 6:03 with 48 seconds on the clock. I'm going to show up whenever I feel like it going. I'm not between the hours of X and Y. Like, of course, it's a region, but if I have to maneuver that around, maneuver it around to meet
Yeah.
somebody else's, criteria, totally fine with that. Totally okay with that. But if he doesn't show up, then I've gone an extra step and maneuvered some stuff around in my life, which not necessarily a bad thing in isolation, but it's not. Everyone knows that doesn't feel good, when that happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, depending on like the level of good faith he gives me and the pattern, the consistency of how many times that happens. If it's a one off, it's a one off. Hey man, like no worries, first time, right? All good, things
Yeah.
happen, right? If he communicates to me, hey, like bro, I can't come today, like so X, Y, or Z happened. Like if it sounds like a legit reason, no problem, dude. If it's a consistent thing, you don't even need to think about it. That's just no longer a that's just like a, oh, I'm just not going to ever schedule things with you ever again. That's it. That's for me. That's how
Yeah.
I'm one and
Yeah.
done. I'm like a one or two and done kind of guy. So I don't know. But I know a lot of people when it comes to maintaining, if you want to maintain the
Yeah.
kind of friendship, a lot of people prefer to give that extra grace as some people give more grace and give more good faith.
Yeah.
But for something like that,
Yeah.
like it's something. My life, the way I like to view it is, my life was pretty much working as intended, and up until I met that person. So I don't need or rely on that person for anything crazy. I can just go back
Yeah.
to what it was before I met him.
Yeah.
So then it's something as simple as, if I see him, dap him up, like, hey, how's it going, whatever. But I'm not going to go out of my way and maneuver things in my schedule to link up with somebody who has a pattern or who is known for not being able to commit to that other end. But I do actually want to ask you. I'm kind of curious. What do you think, like, are some red flags? Like, before we go to the maintaining aspect, like the vetting process. If you see somebody at that gym, 26 years of age, whatever, what is like a red flag to where you're like, you know what, like, hey, we want to link up on Tuesday, and what makes you kind of say no, like, other than like your own
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I would say this: the things I'm looking for are meaningful conversations. So if let's say you talk to somebody and they constantly are steering the topic towards hooking up with girls or something, right? Or playing video games or just some nonsense, right? Or sports, and I like sports, so I watch football, so I'm not even like, but let's just say you talk to somebody and they're constantly doing something like that. Well, right away that's telling me where their focus is, right? Like this is the thing they want to talk about most. That's red flag number one, right? And it's probably maybe the only one I can really think of because it's by far the most important, right? If they're talking to me about their work, if they're talking to me about the gym, or at least if I can steer the conversation that way and I'm not feeling resistance, because there's a lot of times, I mean, I can think of people in my life who I'll try to have a serious talk to them about something, and it's like I'm talking to a wall, like I'm bringing this topic up, like, hey, what are you having? What are you doing for this and that? What are your goals here? What's your plan with that? And it's like they'll make a comment about it, like one sentence, and then immediately shift it to something else. And it's like I'm constantly having to try to fight to bring the conversation back towards something like actually useful and meaningful that I actually care about. That is a huge red flag. And I think that if you see that, as you were speaking, I was thinking about this. I think it's probably useful to you, especially at the very beginning, and maybe this will have to change when you get further along in your lock-in, but at least at the very beginning, you may have to organize your friends into almost like a tier list. All right, you don't have to actually do this. I mean, some of you might get a spreadsheet out and actually do this, but you don't really need to. But let's say you have friends who they're on your level or above you, and you can rely on them and you want them to be able to rely on you. You prioritize these people first, right? Like I'm going to reach out to them. If they want to make plans with me, I'm going to cancel something else because this is the relationship I want to maintain above all. And these are like basically tier one friends, guys you want to be around and hang out with and do stuff with. You may have other friends, and this is why I say it may change as you go along, because when you're early on in your journey, especially if you're young, you probably have a lot of time, right? You probably have a lot of free time, and you can probably sustain a few friendships that are not very productive, right? Like once in a while you hang out with Joe, and all Joe and you do is go get food and talk about women and sports, and it's fun and you like Joe and it's a good time, but this is not productive, and you know that Joe doesn't have anything going for him and he's not going to anytime soon, so you know you're not going to build anything with that guy. It's just somebody you have around to be like friendly with and blah blah blah. that's a lower tier, right? It's like a different type of friend, and this is a little harsh to say, but maybe he's expendable, right? If Joe wants to do something with you, but Peter, who's locked in with you, wants to do something, that's got to be a choice you have to make, right? And that might be tough because maybe you've known Joe a long time. Maybe he was your best friend since elementary school, but you can just see the path that he's on, and it's not the path you want to be on. And an important thing to say about this too, you can't expect to change people. Or maybe that's an important thing we should
Yeah.
mention here.
Hmm.
You can't drag anybody with you. It's not going to work, man. There's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter how. This goes for anyone. Your family members, your best friend, your girlfriend, wife. There's nothing you can do to pull them along on the path with you. They have to come with you willingly. And that's something you got to accept early on in a friendship. Like this person is who they are. You got to accept them for who they are or don't. That's up to you. But if you're going to keep them around in your life and you're constantly trying to get them to improve and they're not doing it, all you're going to do is get frustrated. And they're going to get frustrated because they're going to feel like, well, you're not my dad. Why are you always riding me like this and that? And you don't want to be that guy either. I mean, it's not productive for anybody.
Right.
So that's number one. Accept people for who they are, categorize them, and be honest about it. And, you know, I think naturally those types of friendships will fall away. The Joes of the world, you're going to just lose them naturally. I mean, you may have to come to the point where you just cut them off, but if you're not prioritizing something, it's not going to stick around.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that's a
yeah,
really important. The tier list. What you're talking about is you have different kind of tiers of friends, and I think some aspect of it sounds like you kind of get what you put into it. Your mileage may vary, right? So it's like if you have a group of friends that you and like call, let's say B tier. I hate to use terminology like that, but let's just say B tier, where you show up to the gym, they're there, and you say, hey, what's going on, man? Like, how's you dap them up, you talk about everything. Like maybe you don't talk about any
yeah,
like religion or politics around them because like you don't want to risk like maybe getting into a controversial discussion with this person because that could take time, or maybe you don't, as you said,
yeah,
maybe you don't see any path to maybe improving his perspective or what have you, or maybe you don't see any path for him
yeah,
to improve your perspective on something. So you just keep him around as a person that's hey, I can talk to you about the gym maybe because you're at the gym together already. So maybe hey, like, hey, what's your favorite, like, do you like incline press or do you like decline press for chest, whatever, something like
right,
that. But
right,
then you've got the next tier up where you say, maybe it's the A tiers where you're thinking, okay, this person I can kind of talk to you a little bit more, right? Like you can ask them different questions, you can link up, and you don't have to talk about sports or whatever all the time. You can actually ask like, hey, what's going on with you see what happened with the such and such and blah blah blah. And then if there's a little bit of a, as you said, steering available option to the conversation of into something important,
yeah,
you can get there. But these people are a little bit between S and B, so it's kind of like you don't go out of your way all the time to kind of hang out with them, but they're there, and you once in a while hit them up and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And then you've got the S tiers,
yeah,
which I think you can only have a couple of these, if any, if more than one or two or three of these guys, where you can link up
yeah,
with them consistently and say, "Hey, man, like this happened. What should I do with this? Hey, you think what happened with your life situation? Maybe this is a better option for you." And whatever goes on, and you
yeah,
can go really any topic with those people. So for me personally, I've got a lot of B tiers where I make the calculus decision to not even bring up certain things. Um, and I'll give you an anecdote. My grandfather, when I was about 10 years old, he died, I think, when I was 9. But I do remember one thing he said that was pretty important. He told me, you never talk about politics or religion with any of your friends, only to people in the family. And obviously, that's a kind of a common thing. A lot of people say that.
yeah,
When you get to that level of where you're S tier and you could talk to your friend about politics, religion, like that's when you kind of know that person is already like that S tier level. Because honestly, you can't really talk about that stuff with the B's and even the A's, some of the A's, because you're going to make a calculus decision that they're not going to process your opinion on something very well. You're going to say one thing and then they're going to attribute a million different things with that thing. So, and then they're going to
yeah,
kind of create a straw man of who you are, and then they're going to dislike that straw man because that's what they do.
yep,
And they might treat you differently because simply as simple as, hey, you know what? I think everybody should be allowed to own a gun in the United States. I like that. Then they might think, okay, well, he says that, and what else are the talking points? And blah, 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 blah. He's probably this and that, and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. And that's
yep,
not even worth
yep,
entering that zone with that person because he's already lost on that. But maybe he's really good at knowledgeable on accounting or something. So maybe you could talk to him about other things that have nothing with that tribalism or that emotional vitriolic response related to it.
yeah,
So that's why I don't even
yeah,
bother with like certain topics with certain people because they do offer 80% of their mindset is good in some ways. So why risk
yeah,
why risk it for that 20% that's you know unbased, if you will. So, but then,
Right.
but you need to be able to discuss that stuff with certain individuals. So, I think that's why you need to get those S tiers and maybe the A plus tiers to talk about that stuff. Um, but
Yeah.
it's like it's for to me it's you can't find those people at the gym like in one go. Like you have to kind of figure out. Like, there's certain people you maybe look at once and think that guy's locked in, that guy's dialed. Like we can talk about like certain things. He's not going to bring me down. He's not going to introduce any negative energy to my
Yeah.
life that I don't need. You know, maybe you can see that in just their eyes, but as you said earlier, it's hard to kind of break into a friendship with somebody like that because they're so dialed and they don't have time for that. Like literally, every single
Right.
second of their day is already optimized. So they have their guard up and stuff, and I get that, and I'm sort of like that too in some ways. Like I don't even go to the gym. I work out in my garage, so it's like I don't even have the opportunity to meet people
Yeah.
like through the gym. But there's other ways to go about that. But I think the question, I guess, which I gotta kick over to you is, what do you think about maintaining these kind of friendships? And have you ever taken a risk on somebody that you thought was in the B tier, and it kind of surprised you to be, maybe he's more open minded than you thought and providing value to you, and to maybe the A and S tier level, and then also vice versa. Have you ever like had somebody that you knew for a long time, and maybe said something? Maybe it's 2016 and it rolls around, or 2020 rolls around. You know what I'm saying? And you say something a little bit
Yeah.
controversial, and then he no longer talks to you about anything like that. He kind of thinks negatively of you, etc. So, in both directions, like, do you have any
Yeah.
examples of that, or what do you think's more probable?
Yeah, I think I do have examples of both. I've had people who I've known like a very long time, and back when I was one of those B tier people. I mean, uh, so I've several thoughts here. I would say I'll answer your question, but one comment which leads into it, which is basically, I think the key here too that we should mention is that you need to be everything we're saying in terms of your vetting these people, make sure you're that too, right? Like, of course, it has to start there. Like, you have to start with you need to be the kind of person who can hear somebody's opinion that you strongly disagree with, and just be okay with it, right? Like, it's not even like you might think that's an idiot opinion. It's very stupid what you just said, but I can see why you think that, right? Like, I'm listening to you. I guess that's how I summarize that key thing right there. Like, treat people as full human beings, right? They've had an entire life of experience and knowledge, and they have reasons for believing what they do, for doing what they do, and you can listen to them and maybe disagree with them and disagree with the conclusions that they've drawn, but at least understand that they have a firm understandable reason for what they're doing and what they believe. You need to be that kind of person first and foremost, right? If you can do that, if you hear somebody say like, "Well, I think we should outlaw guns," right? Yeah, that's dumb. That's a very dumb thing to say. But think about this from their perspective. They're trying to be empathetic. They think that that's a safer way for the world to be, right? They have their perspective. It's wrong in my view, but they have their perspective, right? And I can respect that. I can respect if, especially if it's a very strong opinion. I think when if somebody has strong opinions, that is actually a green flag in my view, right? If they care enough about things to actually form well thought out, strong opinions on things, I respect that. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Now, you might find people of a certain tribe who have strong opinions and don't have good reasons for it. That is definitely a red flag. But that's why you got to get to know them. That's why you got to talk to them about it and hear what they have to say. If they say, well, I just believe this and that, and you can tell it's just because they listen to the news and that's what they've been told to think, okay, that person, you can write them off. That's stupid as hell. But if they have genuine reasons and they think it out, that's where I said you got to start treating people like full human beings, because as you get further along into the locked in journey, and by the way, if you become religious, if you ever do that, you're going to find this out very quickly, right? People box you in immediately. They're going to box you in. They're going to disregard everything you have to say, do exactly what Tony just said, and assume everything that you think and assume that you don't have good reasons for it. Those people you got to write off, but make sure you're not doing it to anybody else. All right, that's the key thing. Now, maintaining those friendships actually becomes pretty easy if they are one of those people and you're one of those people, right? Because as I said, you're willing to listen to anything they have to say, you're willing to hear them out, you're willing to debate with them, argue with them, and they can handle it and you can handle it, and at the end of the day, even if you guys don't agree, you're still going to have a productive conversation that's very useful. If you're going to go into business with somebody, if you're going to try to work on a project with somebody, you need to have that. You got to have some kind of pushback here and there. You're not right about everything, no matter what it is, no matter what subject you even think you're an expert on, you don't know everything, and you're not right about all of your opinions. So you do need to be able to accept the pushback and give it. And honestly, if it's the right person, that very thing actually goes towards building and maintaining the friendship because it develops trust.
Right. And
So
gaining.
that's a key. Be trustworthy, and you can gain the trust of others. And here's the thing: it makes you a little vulnerable. Like somebody has to bring it up first, right? Depending on how locked in you are, if you want this thing to move quickly, you want to find out if they're worth your time right away. You may have to bring this up right away. You may have to bring this up in the first conversation, right? So
And often you
bring
can
up
pick
some
up hints
controversial
about
subject.
it too, right? You can kind of play the room and
Yeah,
pick up hints about it too.
exactly. Yeah, go right at it. Like don't if you want to tiptoe and you want to be a little more smooth about it, you got time to do that. Go ahead, because you can often ease people into stuff like that. But if you don't care and you don't want to do that, you just go right at it. Bring up something controversial. See what they have to say. If they go crazy about it, if they get really offended, boom, yeah, it's okay. Good for you. Like you're not for me, but I understand. You go for good luck. But if you go right at it and they open up and they're even willing to talk about it, maybe they're even happy to talk about it. They're happy to disagree with you. That's a very good sign. And this is also somebody I know. I know I said earlier you can't really drag somebody along, and that is true. But if they are somebody who's open to talking about things and open to having their mind changed and really discussing their opinions, that is somebody you can work on a little bit and kind of mold them and let them mold you too, right? Everything I say has to go in both directions. So if you're willing to work with somebody and trust them and be a little vulnerable around them, then you expect the same return,
Right.
and you can kind of bounce off each other like that.
Right. And
So.
I do agree with that, and I do think there's several layers of kind of the communication level. Like you just said, there's subliminal communication that exists without anybody speaking that you can pick up on. If an individual walks into the room, let's say you're with your girlfriend or something like that, and then she said, "Hey, you want to meet, you want to meet Catherine's Catherine's boyfriend? He's we're gonna do a double date, and you're forced to hang out with this guy because
The
you're
homie-in-law.
yes, your homie-in-law, exactly. And you
Yeah.
could see two different individuals. One could walk in, with like terrible posture, doesn't even look you in the eye. When he shakes his hand, you know exactly what handshake I'm going to describe. He's got that little, I don't want
Yeah.
to say woman's handshake, but like that little like over the hand couple fingers. It's a quick little a
Yeah.
pinch, and that's like it's
Yeah.
kind of it is a cliche for a reason. Like if you have a firm handshake, like that's the first thing that's your first impression on somebody. But you could kind of tell
Right.
like that moment when he grabs your hand, it's like everything that my girlfriend said that her friend said about her boyfriend is all true. You know what I mean? That moment, you're like, it's all
Yeah.
clicked. Or you get like some guy that walks in,
Yeah.
good posture. He kind of looks, like-minded. He's looking in your eyes, like, "Hey, man, I'm Jim. Nice to meet you." Shake his hand, and you kind of like, "Dang, is that true? What she says about him? I don't think so. He's locked in."
Mhm.
And it's almost like
Yeah.
hit or miss
Yeah.
instantaneously with the subliminals. But for me, for vetting, I think this is a kind of a rule I like to follow, and is that if you can predict 90% or more of somebody's beliefs based on one or two answers to like a basic set of questions, it's probably not in your best interest to develop and maintain like a friendship with that individual. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is I have a list of questions that I don't have it written down, but I have like a list of questions that I ask people. If I first meet them, like I've got a little bit of like a just random stuff, like an icebreaker list, if you will. And one of those questions is like,
Yeah.
have you ever been arrested? Just something simple like that. And the reason I bring that up is because one time I was sitting at a table with a bunch of older folks, and I was like the odd one out. I was the younger guy. I was kind of like this. I was wearing a hoodie, and they were all dressed like pretty well, and it was a work event. And it was kind of like I didn't think I would fit in there, so I just kind of made a joke. I'm like, "Hey, anybody ever been arrested?" And then we went around the table and kind of everyone shared their little story about how hey, I was with my son one time and he mouthed off in line at the movie theater, and I had to defend him, and I got into a little fight with somebody, and we both got arrested that night. Whatever. Everybody had an interesting story, and then suddenly I became like the most popular guy on the table because I started this whole kind of conversation, and just stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I've always been going back to that question, and it's like you kind of be surprised at people's little anecdotes or stories about that, but
Yeah.
you can't really tell too much from that question. That's on a list of icebreakers, but what I really mean is like you ask questions like you said, like the gun thing. You can ask a question about somebody like, "Dude, my cousin owns a gun. Like, yeah, what do you think about guns, man? Have you ever shot a gun?" Boom. If they say like immediately react and say, "Oh, guns are evil and like they kill people. Without guns, there will be no murders, et cetera, et cetera." Like if they're hardcore against guns, then you put that down in your head and you think, "Okay, let me think. Can I predict more about this person?" Then you ask them like the obvious follow up questions of that and say, okay, what about,
Yeah.
what about X, Y, and Z? And if they exactly are purporting to what you may think from like a CNN talking point list or whatever, it's probably not worth. You probably don't need to talk to that person. You can just turn on CNN, right? So, and same goes for the
Right.
other side, Fox News, etc. Like, if you ask that individual the same question, hey, my cousin has a gun, etc. Like, he likes to go to the range. Like, what do you think about guns? And if he says, oh, everyone should have a gun. I think everyone should own a gun, 4 or 5 guns, and guns are crazy. It's crazy that people don't own guns in California, and it's all that. If he's on that level,
Yeah.
you ask him more questions, and maybe he has got a Trump tattoo or something like that, or maybe he was at the Capitol on Jan 6. Who knows? And not bashing those folks,
He
but
just got pardoned.
yeah, he maybe
Yeah.
just got pardoned the
Yeah.
interruption. You know what I mean?
That guy has a good arrest story if that's the case. Yeah.
100%. So, but my point is with these people, you don't need these people in your life. You can turn on Fox News, you can turn on CNN. Like that's what they are. They're walking CNN bots or whatever. So
Yeah.
to me, like that's not going to be a person you want. What you want to look for with these vetting questions is somebody giving you a little bit of nuance, somebody willing to say something as simple as I don't really know. I haven't really thought about that. That's a better answer than than the extremes of the right and left. So if you ask somebody like,
Yeah.
hey man,
Yeah.
my cousin has a gun. What do you think about guns? Like whatever. And he says, I never shot a gun, but always been interested. Maybe someday. Kind of cool. Perfect answer because that's not political. That's just, hey, this is the truth about the situation. I'm interested in a little bit, maybe at one point. That's somebody you can maybe. That would be somebody I would want to actually ask more questions about, right? And so
Right.
that goes with everybody. That's not just like your age group person, like only. That could be elders. That could be even younger folks. Like that is that set of questions. And I'm not going to give you the questions, but just you know what I'm talking about. Just create a list of questions and
Yeah.
think about like what you do. And I'd like you to kind of speak on that too because I feel like you're similar with that too. And maybe you have a list of questions. And we
Yeah.
never talked about this before, guys. This is something that's ad hoc, and I'm willing to bet 8% of my net worth that Dean has a list of questions in his head that he can think of rapid fire that is just exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We never discussed it. So over to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing. I wouldn't say I have a list of questions, so I'll take that 8% of yours. But I do have a very similar process. I just happen to be a little more reactive in conversations. So I'm pretty good at opening people up, right? I'll just sort of what I was saying earlier about when you get to know somebody, what's on their mind is going to be the first things that just come out naturally, and that tells you so much about who they are, right? Like if the first thing they want to talk to you about is sports, it tells you so much. Like you just know a lot about this person. Like you know that they consume mass entertainment a lot, right? Not just a little bit. Because here's the thing: I said I like sports. I would call myself a sports fan. I enjoy football. I'll never bring up football unless I just happen to see somebody's wearing like a jersey and I just want to like make a comment on it and then that gets the conversation going. But that's not like what I'm going to spend the time on. I'm going to get to know them. I'm going to say, hey, what do you do? Where'd you go to? Did you do you go to college? You have a degree? You work on it. You got any side jobs? You got a girlfriend? I'm going to talk about meaningful subjects right away, but I'm going to get them to open up with some simple little thing. But again, yeah, when you hear somebody talk, it's going to teach you a lot about you'll get better at this over time. I feel like I'm really good at it. I just have a feel for people. Like I said, I've known enough people. I've gotten to know them well enough that I can, as Tony said, I can predict people pretty well. So that's just one little thing. I mean, what's on their mind is what's going to come out. Um, and I'll usually try to steer the conversation a certain way based on what they're saying. So we could use that example. Let's say I'm talking to a dude, and the first thing we're talking about is sports. All right. Well, that's number one. I already know, like, okay, I know a lot about this guy. He probably is a big fan of Marvel. He probably he probably plays a lot of video games. He probably drinks on the weekends, and like maybe he's got a girl. I don't know. I know he's a fairly basic normie kind of guy, right? But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Again, I got to treat him as an individual. I got to treat him as a human being. So let me try to steer it. While you're talking about football, I'll bring up, hey, did you see? I just saw the one of the 49ers defensive backs. He did the Trump dance after he got a sack. What do you think about all the football players doing the Trump dance, right? Boom. Now I've got a controversial subject in his domain that I'm sure he knows about that I can hear his full opinion on. And let's say he gives me a nice nuanced take on it. Like, hey, I support the right to free speech. I'm happy he's having a good time. I don't necessarily like Trump, but I'm glad it didn't bother me. I'd be like, okay, perfect. That's great. That's a nice nuanced answer. I don't care if you like Trump or not. Doesn't matter to me. And let's say he goes the opposite direction. He's a huge Trump fan, and he's like, I thought it was hilarious. Well, I would probably relate to that, and I would also probably laugh with him. But it would be a quick, easy way. Now, if he gets offended if he gets mad about it, right? He has some horrible negative opinion on the matter. boom, easy write off. I'm going to steer the conversation back to sports. Here's another thing with me. If it's somebody, I mean, it probably would depend on how I met them and maybe any some sort of context around it. But let's just say it's just a random guy I met at the gym. I'm probably not going to try that hard with this guy. Like, I'm not going to push any more than that. Like, I'm pretty much ready to just kind of not necessarily write him off, but like kind of just leave it there. And like maybe if he's around, I'll say hi to him again, but I'm not going to really try to push it any further than that. That's enough for me, right?
Mm.
So I don't push too hard on those kinds of things.
But
But yeah,
for these people that you're talking about, though, for me personally, because this is a perfect segue into like my next kind of what I was my next kind of phase in this of questioning for this topic. But for these people, like you're forced to hang out with certain folks. Let's say you have a job and you work, then you have like coworkers you have to hang out with. There's a company party, whatever. They're gonna be there, right? They're gonna be at that every time that you're gonna see them every once in a while, and they're gonna be there, same people. So if you can find the people that you think are the more open-minded folks, like you were talking about, I mean, again, with coworkers, this is more the B, even C tier level where you don't even want to bring that stuff up. But there is a way to do
yeah,
it without giving your opinion. Just like you said, yeah, what was going on with that? What was going? Did you see that was a great football game? Did you see like what's all going on with those guys doing the Trump dance? You can't tell what
yeah,
I think about Trump or not Trump or whatever, like from just that, but you could kind of get them to expose themselves. And if they're smart like us, they're going to say something like, yeah, that was interesting. What's going on with that? Yeah. Those will flip back to you and
yeah, exactly.
it'll go
Yeah,
forever. If you meet
a
somebody like,
little chess match.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
yeah,
but if you find somebody, like a lot of people, they don't think about that. They just, oh my God, I hate Trump so much. Oh my goodness, he's Hitler.
yeah,
Or other folks are like, oh my God, he's Hitler. I love Hitler. So people are just different angles,
yeah,
And so, and again, I think as you pointed out, it's important because both sides of the radicalism is a red flag. So if they have a Trump tattoo or if they have like a Trump shirt on, if they have a Trump shirt on, it's like it's something about like you like Trump, don't like Trump, whatever. Like it's still something that to me that's a red flag because as you said, it's all they're thinking about is some other person. It's weird, but
right.
going back to kind of where I'm going with this, and is there's two questions that are there's two questions that are important. One is what are we like? What's our point, right? Like that's Adam, what's your point? What's our like? What's the point of having all these friendships? Like, what's the point of even caring or optimizing any of this stuff? Like, why would you? What do you gain from all these? Because that's real. That's what's hidden in there. What do you gain from these people? And we'll get
Yeah,
to that.
yeah,
But before we get to that, I think this is more of a three-way problem. It's like a three-part equation. And one is for me personally, like I'm married, so I'm in a different phase of acquiring and maintaining friends, like than I was when I was single. And then there's also like the dating phase. So if you're like dating a girl and you're not married, so you're not single, you're not married, but you're dating somebody, you're gonna meet people through that person. Like that's just gonna happen because that person's gonna introduce you to their friends, and their friends are gonna have boyfriends, just like I said earlier, and you're gonna have an opportunity to kind of make good friends there, and then over time, you as a couple will maybe grow and start hanging out with people consistently, and you'll kind of see that that person's always at that every party, or that person's always at whatever, and hey, that guy's not really locked in. I don't even want to talk to that guy, but you're gonna have to talk to him. So that's those B,
yeah,
C tier, even maybe lower. But there might be people that you find and be able to vet. You can maybe vet, or maybe even I don't want to say groom, but you maybe can like groom that person into somebody that you could talk to at least because you're forced to hang out with them. So that you never
yeah,
know with those, right? So there's that phase. But for me, it's like I'm married, so it's like I don't want to be around somebody who's talking about constantly dating women and getting pussy and everything. Like I don't care about that. That's not something I want to discuss. But if you're single,
yeah,
maybe that is something you want to discuss. Maybe it's something you want to. Maybe you're really into right now is you're focusing on. Hey, I've got my career locked in. I've got my fitness locked in. I don't have my woman locked in. So maybe that aspect of your life is underdeveloped, and maybe you do want to surround yourself with folks who are still in that phase, trying to constantly talk about that, so that you can maybe optimize
yeah,
your strategies of hey, like how do I maintain and acquire a woman? So that's even part four of the conversation we can get into later. But it's just that level of where you're are in life. So like if you're married
yeah,
with kids, you're gonna want to be around people that are married with kids. You're just gonna gravitate towards them naturally because those are the issues you're gonna be going through. Hey, my kid is wants to learn a musical instrument. Like what should we which one is best? Or hey, my daughter is
yeah,
starting to date people. Like what do I do? Like at that stage in your life, or maybe even later. Hey, my son is now has a job interview and he's after college and what. So everything changes with the stage of life you're at. So yeah, I think like for me personally, I would not be when I hear somebody. You said sports, right? You said if you hear somebody talking about like sports immediately first thing they're consuming mass media, it's like okay, but for me, it's like if somebody's talking about, oh hey, I blanked this woman. It was so, oh my god, I blanked so much and blank, and it blank was so blank. You know what I'm blank? And I'm just like, dude, I don't. I hear you. Okay, congrats, bro. But like, I don't want to hear that. Like, that's not something I want to talk to you about, like, at all. But I
Yeah,
can see
yeah,
you're hyper focused on that, so get
yeah,
after it. But I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna gravitate
right,
towards somebody who's not constantly trapped by that
yeah,
thought. You know what I mean? But maybe in a different stage of my
yeah.
life, maybe I would think of, hey, I need to surround myself by this person, get some kind of insight, and get some do's and don'ts. So it's up to you to cultivate that. And I think do have a blog post on cultivating success. So check that out over on maneuver.life. But
Yeah.
getting back to
You know what that makes me think of?
perfect, yeah, perfect.
Just to interrupt you for a sec. So what that makes me think of is like I get so Adam, what's your point, right? So the whole point of this conversation is how to network and cultivate friends and identify people. And you notice like I think the conversation's fairly abstract. I mean, that's how the whole maneuver thing is going to be. That's just how we are, right? It's an abstract conversation, and there are specific steps you can take, right? My hope is that if you're listening to this, you're gleaning the steps from what we're saying, right? Like it's an abstract conversation where, in my view, if you want to make valuable friends, you first need to be a valuable person on your own, right? And so that requires a lot of learning. It requires you to analyze yourself, analyze your actions, and only then will you really be able to analyze someone else, right? So the example you just gave, like let's say I'm at a stage in my life where you said I got my career and whatever else, but I don't have a wife, okay? And I want to get better at talking to women and I want to do that. So you meet somebody who had, there's a lot of guys. Listen, you meet a guy who's like really tall and jacked. To be honest with you, he's not going to know. Like he's not going to have good advice. Like he's going to know women. He's going to get women easily, but he doesn't know like what to do because he's never had to try, right? So I mean, you may or may not get some valuable information out of this person, but that's not the key indicator. The main thing is you want to get to know the guy and find out how he thinks. Like, is he strategizing? Is he analyzing information and drawing conclusions that make sense? And is he using that to then, build up and continue to go forward? And regardless of what subject he's applying that to, hopefully it's something productive, but you know that he's the type of person who can do that, right? And so that is valuable in and of itself because you can bring other things to him, even something he's not necessarily focused on, and you can pick his brain. You can get something out of that relationship. And now here's another thing too. And this again, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I said earlier that you really can't drag people along. But what you can do is be an example. So if you meet some guy and he's super hyper focused on getting laid, right? But he's doing it in a smart way and he's analyzing and you can see he's a thinker. What you can do is be an example following a path that's a little more productive. He's going to see that you're doing that. He's going to want to know about it because he's a thinker. He's a guy who does stuff like that. He's going to say, "I see you're doing this and that. What's up with that? Can I help? Or can I get involved?" And then you can sort of pull him in that way, right? Now it's not guaranteed to work, but that's something you can do. So another key thing here that you should take from this is that it's all going to start from within. If you're going to make meaningful friendships, if you're going to surround yourself with valuable people who are building, you first need to be that on your own, and that's going to help you identify them when you start to meet people and start to really pick their brains and get to know them better. So I think you made a good point in terms of like you may be at a certain stage in your life where you're desiring this and that, right? And it's useful to try to hyper focus on that. If I'm focused on my career, I'm going to go to some networking event that has to do specifically with marketing, and I know for sure I'm going to meet people here who are interested in marketing.
Right.
But you don't necessarily have to go that route, right? Like especially if you're younger and you're still meeting tons of people, if you're still in school and stuff like that. These are just general principles you can apply. That hey, I can see this person is a thinker, they're analyzing, and I want people like that in my life,
Right.
regardless of what they're doing. They
No,
can still be valuable to me.
and that is a green flag, as you said, a thinker, right? And for me, it's going back to I have legacy friends that I've been around forever because they've been around forever, and I've had friends that have been around forever that had kind of been they go away eventually, right? And for me, I don't have like a hard rule where I'm like, oh, I'm never going to talk to this person again. But sometimes it happens where I have a friend from maybe like when I was 16, 17 years old, and over time they start to grow apart, and I'm like, you know what? When they message me, hey, you want to link up and whatever, it's kind of, I mean, you're, again, phase changing is part of it, but also when you're that young, 16, 17, you don't do the vetting process. I didn't do the vetting process. I just kind of, whoever
Right.
was
Right.
into whatever I was into, like we just are stuck with being friends for life, right? That's lifer tier. But
Yeah.
in your
Yep.
30s
Yep.
and late 20s, like you're not going to be able to, you don't have the privilege of just being stuck with people, right? Because, like I said, you have like friend opportunities from maybe the girlfriend angle, because like they're the girlfriend's friends, boyfriend, whatever, or maybe like the coworker situation, but those people are so focused on something that they needed to do instead of go to school and hang out with you every day. Like that's not
Right.
that doesn't happen anymore. So for me, it's the way I think about it is, do I even need friends? Yes, of course, right? So that's part one. Do we need friends? Yes, we do. So not even going to go into that. That's entry level. That's like one of those pseudo intellectual things. Well, does anyone need if a tree falls in the woods? Does
Yeah.
anybody need friends to talk about it with? Did it happen? Doesn't matter. So yes, you do. Not going to explain that why, but if you go into a friendship cold and you don't vet it, it could lead to it's almost a waste of time, really. And that's why I bring this up, because
Yep.
there are people that come out of your life on one end. You think, hey, this guy's, maybe he's a good friend of mine. Maybe it can be worth putting investment into, and maybe I want to link up with him and talk business or talk women or talk philosophy, talk whatever. And he's just dragging you down, and it's
Right.
not his fault. It's your fault for allowing him to put negative energy in your life. So if you're in a
Right.
phase, it's January, you're getting locked in. If you're in a phase where you want to lose some weight and you want to, get after your finances, and you're hanging out with people that are just blowing money on strippers or whatever, like whatever the issue is, buying Funko Pop collection toys, like whatever, and
Yep.
not then when they say stuff like the gym is for people who just do steroids, that's all it is. Those folks, just get them out of your life.
Yeah.
Just don't. There's no point,
Yeah.
because you're not going
Yeah.
to be able to convince that person that, hey, like what I'm doing is actually interesting. I like it. The reason that what you're doing is good is because of people like that. Because the majority of folks are like that. They don't want to put the effort in, so they say, well, that's just steroids. That's just this and that. Like they're just lazy. They don't want to. That's what makes what you're doing valuable, because it's rare. So keep
Right.
staying
Right.
locked in, and there is some level of solitude, and some level of like, there is actually some good aspects of being alone in something. And I don't know. We talked about this last week. If you can lock in alone 2 weeks ago and not tell anybody, secretly lock in, it is a nice little boost. And yeah, that feeling
Yeah.
where 6 months go by and you haven't told anybody, but you started some hobby, and now you're insanely like intermediate at that hobby. I almost said insanely expert, but you're 6 months in, you're intermediate at that
Insanely
hobby,
intermediate.
and it
Yeah.
feels
You're
pretty good.
very mediocre at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to, if you're single and you're, like you said, if you're looking for somebody, if you're trying to find a woman in life, yeah, maybe it helps to be around men that are also trying to find women, because you can bounce ideas off them and say, hey, this and that. But going back to, for me, when I got married, I would ask older folks, hey, like people that have been married 10, 20 years, I'd ask them this one question, and it helped me accrue a lot of wisdom, right? And absorb things. And you could choose to agree with them, or you can kind of say, okay, let me put that down and write that down and think about it later. You ask this question, say, hey, if you could tell yourself, the day before your wedding, one sentence of advice in order to keep the marriage successful, what would it be? And that question, every single time I've asked that question to somebody, they do this. Yeah, no one's ever asked me a question like that. Actually, I gotta think about it. That's a good question. That's interesting. And then they give me a good piece of. They say, what, I would say, enjoy the little moments, something like that, some interesting thing where if they all say the same thing, it's important. So I mean, absorb that in, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yeah.
do to kind of whatever phase I'm in. So if you're in the phase of, hey, I'm trying to gain weight, like I want to get really strong, go ask the strongest people that you know. Hey man, if you could give yourself some advice, 10 years ago when you just started, like one day before you went to the gym, like what would you say? Oh man, I would do sets
Yeah.
of five way earlier. I would, whatever. They just say
Yeah.
whatever, and that's always going to be
Yeah.
stuff that you want to know. Somebody that's done it, that is the science. The person that's done it before is the scientific experiment. So ask him, ask them, and don't go on Reddit and say, okay, I need to figure out the most optimal way to gain 6%, 6 more pounds with only 1% of it being body fat, and then fiber, and the rest needs to be intramuscular muscle fibers. How do I do that? And then you're gonna get these push-pull leg splits with the a focus on eccentric, and it's important to eat only whole food ingredients with like no gluten and everything. It's nobody gives a fuck about that. But look, post your body, post your physique, post it. You're not going to though.
Yeah. Post
So
physique.
that's
Yeah.
that. You see
Yeah.
where I'm going with this?
I do. Yeah. So I think it's yeah. I think we're locked in together on this one because it's just. I think that the most important thing you can do, and this is great because it's the theme of our all of our discussions, is you got to make it your responsibility. You need to be a sponge, right? The only way you're going to make valuable connections is if you're somebody worth connecting with on your own. So be the person who's asking the questions, who's genuinely considering what's being said back to you. You got to strip away all of your preconceptions to really get to know somebody and to really understand what they have to tell you. You need to put your ego aside and say, I don't know anything. I'm like a child. I'm asking you this question as if I'm an idiot, right? Explain it to me what you know, right? And they may get to the point where they may overlap a lot of your information. That's a good thing. That means that actually should that helps you understand what you really do know, because you may have a lot of preconceptions and everybody else is disagreeing with you. Well, you're probably wrong then if that's what's going on, right? And you may have a lot of preconceptions and everybody you talk to agrees with you. Great, that means you're on the right path, right? These are things you have to know on your own. So this could be like a lesson on charisma, and eventually we'll talk to we'll get to the subject of like talking to women and stuff. But one of the best ways to make friendships and be an open kind of person is to get people to talk about themselves. And the only way you can do that is to truly be interested. You can't fake that. You can't fake being interested in something. So you have to just cultivate that within yourself. Like, I am curious about you. I am curious about the things you're doing. And I really want to know what you have to say about this and that. That people are going to feel that and they're going to like that. People love to talk about themselves. That's the number one subject. You're going to work a sales job, you'll find that out. All right. That's the key thing to opening somebody up, is to get them to talk about themselves in some way. And again, the only way to do that is to truly be interested. So work on being a sponge. That's like 15 charisma points right there. Just getting people to talk about themselves. Forget about being funny, right? Forget about being clever. All that stuff is gonna, you either have it or you don't, kind of, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe you'll develop that somehow, but don't worry about that. Just be curious, be naturally open, willing to listen, and you're gonna gain information from them. And as you go further along, you're going to be a better judge of how useful that information truly is, right? And that this is where maybe we should have started with that. We kind of started with like, you got to cut people off if they're doing this and that. Well, this is why. This is why, because you'll know. Like, if you're actually cultivating this skill within yourself, then you're going to know. Well, if I talk to person A about this, I can just predict they're going to give me some super long answer with a lot of details and a lot of thought into it, and they've spent years doing this and that, and they're going to have good information. But if I ask person B about this, they're going to have some super basic comment that I've already known for a long time. I'll be teaching them, right? And maybe that's valuable to you in some way, but you'll be able to know that in advance, right? So
Exactly.
I say
Exactly.
it's the key thing. Start from within. Just as with everything else, make it your responsibility. I'm going to be somebody who is worth connecting with,
Take
and I'm going to
ownership
do
of it.
that through the conversation. Take ownership, and people will see that. You're going to be like a magnet. All right, it's a bit of a spiritual thing, but you're on a certain wavelength, right? We're talking about negative and positive energy you want in your life. Well, the only way you're going to attract positive energy is by being a positive kind of person
Right.
yourself.
Right.
So you start there.
No,
Simple as
it's
that.
perfectly well said. And I think this whole thing is it's interesting that you and I both avoided, again, subconsciously, because we don't prep for these. We just go in cold sometimes. We have discussed this
Yeah.
over years and years, but it's interesting that we both avoided the elephant in the room, because this is going to be the first question that we're going to segue into for the Reddit questions. But yeah, we of course we've avoided it, and I'm not even going to discuss what the elephant in the room is. I'm just going to read the question because it's a perfect segue into it. So I'm
Yeah.
just
Let's
going to
do
read this
it.
question. So
Let's do it.
we have on Reddit here. Do men actually not believe in being friends with women? Two question marks. So that's of course right. So I'll read the I'll read. I kind of want to
Yeah.
read the description because it is. I'll just read it because it's attached. But yeah, this was asked
This is
on
a woman,
Ask
right? That's a woman asking
100%.
this, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
This is on
Okay.
Ask Men Advice. A woman asking, saying, "Hey, do men actually not believe in being friends with women?" And her little anecdote is relevant, but she does say, I'll just read it. I feel like the majority of guys I consider friends inevitably confess feelings for me at some point during our friendship, and it's getting frustrating because it feels like that's the only reason they even decided to be friends with me. That is the only reason. Spoilers. And while I don't know for sure if there's a connection, is it due to that theory that men are only friends with women if they want to pursue them, find them attractive? Yes, that is. But that's the description.
Yeah.
But it's not about her anecdote. This is more of a general. Do men actually not about actually, but it's more about should men even be friends with women? That's the question, right? We can talk
Yeah.
specifically about her anecdote because there is something in there. But yeah, I mean, in general, we have avoided discussing this for 55 minutes or whatever, and And it's perfectly segues into this question because we've been
Yeah,
saying, oh, go to the gym, maybe talk to him, etc. Do he and da da da. There
yeah.
is another whole chapter of this is becoming friends with a woman. What do we do? Is that a thing? Like, what should you? How do you handle
Right.
that? How do you maneuver that? Like, do you run through the
Yeah.
questions like the script? Like, do you stress test it? Like, do you treat it different? So there's all that, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this, but I know you do too. So let's jump into your thoughts on
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
men actually not
Let's
believe
jump
in?
into the pot of boiling water. Right.
Yeah,
Let's get in there.
let's let's
So,
transition into
um,
it.
yeah. Yeah. My skin's already turning red. Let's see. So here's what I think. I tend to think that it's men and women friendships don't really work or exist for the most part. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that they're impossible. Okay. Like, I do think it's possible. All right. Like, it's rare. And here's why it's rare. Simple fact is, and I can feel the heat building around me, right? Women and men just have different interests. All
Right.
right. As I said at the beginning of
Exactly.
the conversation, there are women who are locked in. I mean, they exist. All right. I'm not going to say that they don't. But if they are locked in, the vast majority of even them are locked in on some kind of BS, like just not that interesting kind of
Right.
thing. They're locked in on their schoolwork. You know what I'm saying? Like, but just the schoolwork, like just not because they love the subject, not because they're just fascinated by whatever the law, right? They're locked in because they want to get the degree and have the status and start earning a lot of money. That's what they're locked in on, right? If, and that's a good rule for men too. I don't people like that are you should really kind of avoid them because they don't care about like for example, I want to make money. Of course, I want to be rich. But I don't want to be rich just to be rich. I don't give a crap about the status except for what it affords me. The status will afford me more options in life to eventually provide for a family and have kids that I
Right.
love, and that's my life. That's what I'm locked in on, right? Like have this overarching worldview where I want everything to fit together so that I can build a legacy. That's what I'm locked in on, something that's really truly meaningful. The vast majority of women that you meet, they're going to be locked in on just that they all that shit I just said is irrelevant. They just care about the degree. I want the degree, I want the status, and that's all I care about, right?
100%.
And that is boring. That's a very boring thing to care about. So if you're that's why meeting women who are worth being friends with is extremely rare for that reason because they just simply have different priorities. And this sounds very negative towards women, but I'm not mad at women for this. It's just men and women are simply built differently. Like a woman has to care about her status because that's how she's safe, you know? Like a woman who doesn't fit into the tribe is going to die. She's going to or be kidnapped and tortured by another tribe, right? That's what a woman's fate is. A man who doesn't fit into the tribe, he'll be just fine. If he's productive on his own, actually he'll build his own tribe. People will come to him, right? So a man doesn't have to worry about things like that. A man can just push forward on the thing he cares about most. Women simply don't have that opportunity. So women who are locked in are generally going to fit into that category. Now here's the other thing though. Even those women can provide value into your life, right?
Are you talking about
It
the
is
women
possible.
who are locked into the school, et cetera, that type of person, or what do you
Right.
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So and that's part of the thing about like being an open kind of person, being willing to trust people, being willing to listen to them and hear what they have to say. It's still possible that they could provide some value into your life. And that's sort of the key thing here is like, are they dragging you down? Like when you talk to this person, are you getting something out of it? And are you also providing value, of course, but the conversation is about how do you value other people. So I'm just focusing on you right now.
Right.
Is this person truly providing value to my life? If you can honestly answer that question with a yes, then great. Keep them in your life, even if it is a woman. It's not simply because they're a woman, end of story, cut them off. No, that's not it. It's just the way, like, you have to think about this a level deeper. It's not just because they're women, it's because women have certain mindsets and priorities that are just not very likely to align with yours.
It is a chicken
That's all
and
that
the
should
egg
go from there.
situation, kind of. Like
Yeah,
it is a then B, and a lot of people think it's a B then A, and I'll
right.
explain that later in the later end of this. But if you think about what we were talking about earlier and said, hey, gentleman at the gym is wants to spot you, or you want to spot him at the chest incline press or whatever. It's not common that a woman will be that person. It's not common, and maybe it happens. Maybe there's a woman
Yeah,
there that's this 1% outlier, whatever, and that's the only person there, and you ask them, hey, you mind spotting me? That might happen, but they're not going to walk up to you and ask you to spot them. That's not going to happen. And if that, again, if that might happen too, okay, sure. For the commenter on Reddit that it happened to me once, and I live in
Yeah.
Arkansas, and this woman approached me and said, "Can you spot me? You're wrong, Tony." So yeah, of course, sure. For you, man, sure that happened, but I'm talking about general case here, and generally speaking, your interests are not going to align with the average woman's interests if you're a man watching this, which you are. So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
and that's not good or bad. That's actually in my mind that's good, but we'll get into that later. But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
do men actually believe in being friends with women? I'm friends with my wife. I'm friends with her mom. Not same friends in the same way that I'm friends with Dean or I'm friends with Jimmy or whatever. But it's not it's a different thing. It's a completely different thing. And I do believe that
Right.
if you're married, you have no business being friends with a woman. There's you can have
Yeah.
acquaintances. You can have acquaintances. That's totally fine. But you know deep down that if you're friends with a woman, and we're talking, if you're texting her multiple times a week, if you're talking to her, giving her updates of your life, if you're seeing her at all, there's a dating context
Yeah.
there. Whether you like it or not, there is a dating context. There is an underlying sexual tension or whatever you want to call it between you and her that you do not have with Dean, even though he's handsome, or with me, or with whether your buddy from the gym that spotted you at the chest press. Like you
Yeah.
don't have that little, oh, what is she? Da, da, da. I guarantee you, and you could do this litmus test. If you're one of those guys who's has a bunch of has a platonic female friend, and you're saying, hey, I'll link up with you, let's get boba, because that's what you do, and let's talk about how our week was. Are you going to be dressing the same way you dress when you hang out with Dean to link up and talk about philosophy or whatever, like whatever it is that watch football? You're not going to be this. Come on, dude. I'm not even going to go down this experiment because
Yeah.
you know this bullshit. So to answer this woman's question, no, this man is not trying to be your friend. 99%
Right.
of the chance he's not. He wants to sleep with you or get something maybe further out of you, which nothing wrong with that. That's biology. But if you're looking for
Yeah.
friends, and this is not, we don't normally give advice to women here, but this is my advice to you if you ever stumble upon this channel. Find some women to be friends with. They're perfect friends for you.
Yeah.
You don't need to.
Yeah.
They'll
That's
never try to
ideal.
sleep with you. So it's like
Yeah.
if it works out, you
Yeah.
just talk to them, hang out
Well, you
with
know
them.
what? You know what's funny is the fact, like just that question being asked at all
Yeah.
is like is proof of what we're saying in terms of men versus women, because
Right.
only a woman would really be questioning something like that, right? Like men, just almost every man you ask will have a similar version of what we're saying. They may not get as deep into it as we do, but they're going to understand that just instinctively, and they're not bothered by it, right? They just, it is what it is, right? But a woman genuinely like this person who's asking the question, do you see how she doesn't take any responsibility for it, right? Like she says, guys only just want to sleep with me. Okay, is that maybe because that's the only value you're providing, right? The potential to be slept with, right? Like if you were really smart and interesting and locked in and had other interesting things about you to provide to this guy, do you think that that's all they would care about? Has she even asked herself that question? No, I guarantee you she hasn't. She just sees herself as like a victim of, and it's almost like a brag too, right? It's like, oh, I'm just so pretty and sweet, and guys just want to be with me, and I don't know how to escape this. I just want to be friends with men. Why? Why do you want to
Yeah,
be
that's a good
friends with
question.
guys so
Why do
badly?
you want
Like,
that?
what? Why is that important, right? If men and women are exactly the same, then why does it matter if this if it's a guy or a girl? Just be friends with other people, right? Like, what is that? Why does it matter if they
There's
want to sleep
something
with you?
to that actually. There is something to that. She's seeking out. It sounds like she's seeking out male friends
Yep.
instead of female
Yep.
friends. And I know a lot of women, historically speaking, from anecdotes that say they don't get along with other women. I don't understand that
Yeah.
either. Like I think my wife has a lot of female friends, and they're all. She has her own little tier list. She doesn't write down an Excel spreadsheet like our audience does, but she has her tier list where
Yeah.
she's got a couple people that she's always goes back to, because they work. For her as a friend, like hey, this person's like-minded individual. I can hang out with. It's the same thing you're gonna say to your buddy. Hey, I can have a friend for 6 months, not talk to him, and then boom, we connect. The first time I talk to him for 6 months, we're fine. She's got that exact
Yeah.
list, and she's got her friends and stuff, and she doesn't have any male friends because she knows that that's not something that she's going to be able to communicate and have a real friendship with a male. Plus, there's always that underlying, you know, situation going on there. So for me, it's
Yeah.
legacy tier. Like if you have if you do have a female friend like from high school or something like that, like where you've really have kept up with her every once a year. Hey, happy New Year, whatever. Maybe there's like some level of maybe there's that, but like even that, I kind of question
Yeah.
your intentions as a man, like for once a year texting a woman about like New Year, like that's a weird thing. But we'll get into that later.
Right.
But it's
Right.
more for me. It's more it's not like you as you said earlier. It's not because they're women you avoid them. It's you kind of will avoid them and they happen to be women, right? Like that's a that's a pattern.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
friends, for friendships
Yeah.
here, if you're trying to
Yeah.
surround yourself with other people that have different perspectives on certain things, I get that, but it's a different thing. If you're mining, like if you're mining data, if you're just going up to a woman and saying, "Hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z?" Like because you want to hear like a woman's perspective, that's a different thing. But I don't think there's
Yeah.
really, for me personally, there's no value in seeking out friendships from other women. Um, I have a wife, so if I need a woman's perspective, I just talk to her. I've got her mom, I can talk to her mom, whatever. And I don't
Yeah.
really need to go farther than that. Um, for me personally.
Yeah.
So it is a thing that I think will get you in trouble too if you're constantly looking for friends and then you have these women friends that are showing up because you're trying to be progressive or whatever and say, hey, as you said earlier, everyone's equal, so I can just be friends with anybody and it's the same, totally normal. You're not going to be able to get the same value out of a woman that you are out of a man as a friend, because there's always going to be some level of, is she into me? Am I being weird? What's
Yep.
going on with the man there? I mean, it's not, you're just hanging out with a guy. It's like, hey man, like
Yeah.
what's up? And honestly, they're not gonna like hold emotional grudges against you. They're not. There's no like any kind of. There's not as much emotional maintenance or upkeep required to make the friendship go farther. They're more
Right.
likely to be interested in things that you're interested in simply because of genetic makeup, etc. Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, there are outlier women who maybe are interested in things you're interested in, but it's not, in my opinion, worth pursuing that as a like hardcore friend with that person, because for many reasons. One, she may have a boyfriend who wouldn't like the fact that you're friends with her. I mean, that might be a part of it,
Right.
and and that will be subconsciously something that she is thinking. Hey, I'm not going to open up to you because I have a boyfriend, which she should be not opening up to you because she has a boyfriend. So there's all these layers, and I think it's just easiest to say, hey, like let's just avoid the situation as much as possible. Like
Yep.
there's no reason to, and that doesn't mean close yourself off to every woman ever. You've got coworkers, you've got acquaintances. You got to be professional. You got to be nice. But when I'm talking about friend, I'm talking about going that extra level of, hey, I've got the phone number. Hey, I'm texting about, hey, what's your advice on this? Hey, what's going on with that? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason why when I ask a woman something, I usually it's a group chat setting with their boyfriend who's my friend. So it's, hey, like, what do you guys both think about this situation, right? Or my brother's wife, I'm
Yeah.
never gonna just send her a text message, but just me to her. It's always, hey, brother and brother's wife, what do you guys think about this whole situation and going on here? And did you guys watch that football game where they're doing the Trump dance? What's going on there? Obviously Jay just asking
Yeah.
questions, but it's
Yeah.
it's 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 a little bit of a nuanced thing. And as you said, every man pretty much knows this subconsciously. And even from the comments, some of these people, the
Yeah.
downvoted comments, you could see they're just saying no, it's not possible. Like no, it's not a thing. Like, and this is actually a
Yeah.
pretty good comment. Does your grandfather have a girl best friend? That's a good comment actually. It's
Yeah.
down. It's heavily downvoted.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Yeah. No, I'll just echo one last thing to summarize that is it's funny because it's way more egalitarian. What you and I are explaining is way more fair and egalitarian than specifically going out of your way to find a woman friend or to be a woman and find a male friend, right? Like that's a bad thing to do because you are actually consciously admitting then that there is a difference between being friends with men and women, right? If you're specifically speaking out the opposite gender, then you know in your mind that they're different, and then you're specifically making a point of that, right? Whereas you and I, it's like, yeah, we know they're different, but I'm still open to the possibility, however rare it may be, that a woman will come along and actually have some valuable thing to add to my life that's not just sex, right? Like that is possible, and I'm open to it. I just think it's extremely unlikely. But whereas the other point of view is saying the opposite of that, that I have to have a male friend or else I'm not progressive, or I need to have women friends or else I'm not a feminist, right? That's ridiculous.
It's
So
just not worth
I
the
agree.
hassle.
Just to echo what you said.
Yeah, it's not worth the
Yeah, it's
hassle.
not. It's definitely not something to like go and seek out. Don't do that. That's ridiculous. Don't. If you have no female friends, fine. You don't
Nothing
need
wrong
to
with that.
change that.
Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it at all. Like don't worry about
And
it.
again,
It's don't.
to put a bow on this, don't be that guy who takes what we just say right now and say, well, women are they're all inferior. Don't go to work tomorrow and
Yeah.
just not talk to any women there. I mean, you have to be professional
Right.
around coworkers, professional friendships, your brother-in-law, your brother's wife, etc. Like these are women in your life that are there. Like that should be enough for you. That should be enough for you, right? If you, especially if you have a
Yeah.
girlfriend, just talk to her. Like, what are you doing? So, and again, I might even be talking to nobody. This is a woman that posted this. I don't know even. I don't really know any men that I know that. Well, actually, that's not true. I do. I know a lot of men that have like boba dates with
I
their
think guys,
female
I think young
platonics.
guys think about this. Yeah, I know when I was younger, I thought that was a thing. I thought it was you should have a
Because you're
mixture of
told. Because you're
friends, you know.
supposed to. You get
Yeah,
you go into
exactly.
Ralph's with the mask
Yeah.
because you're supposed to wear the mask, even if it looks like a chin diaper. You're just supposed to wear it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, don't
but
worry about that crap.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think yeah, we've said a good amount about this, but I think if you really have like a nuanced question about this, just send us an email at
Yeah.
maneuver.life@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to kind of go into specifics with a situation that's actually from a viewer. But from this, I mean, this is just it almost feels like, yeah, like you said, a little bit of a humble brag kind of thing. It's actually kind of,
Yeah.
now I'm seeing it more. I'm like, I don't really
Yeah.
think that this is even organic. But I do have friends
Yeah.
that have female friends and they go on like boba dates and they hang out and they catch, but they're platonic and stuff, and I get that, but they're single. That's the thing. They're all these people
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who's married
Yeah.
who has a female
Yeah.
friend that's actually like
Oh,
legitimate.
it's way easier to be friends with women when you're single. That's
Yeah, I
for
mean that's
sure.
you have an excuse, But then
Yeah.
it goes into what
Yeah.
she's saying. You are almost on some level being Freud about this. You're just trying to sleep with her in some way,
Yeah.
right? So you have to
Yeah.
fight
Be
that
honest with it.
that lust and that urge.
Yeah.
But
Right.
anyway, that's something to posit. Um, yeah. So
All right. What was the other one? What was the next one we wanted to do?
well, we have a gentleman, an individual who is talking about how his 3-year-old daughter is not biologically his, and I think that would be a good one to segue into
Okay.
if you want to read that one.
Okay. Yeah. I'll pull that one up. Okay. Not super long. I'll read this.
Even just in the first
I
paragraph.
recently discovered. Okay. Yeah, I recently discovered through DNA testing that the 3-year-old daughter I've been raising isn't biologically mine. The results from both a legal paternity test and an over-the-counter kit confirmed this. Both tests match with missing loci that include me as her biological father.
Okay.
But he goes on to say, him and the mother have been broken up for 2 years, and obviously he still cares about the girl, the daughter, and cares about her best interest. So he's wondering how to handle that. How do people do
Right.
about that?
Right. So this is a good question, and this is a very nuanced situation that's unfortunate, very unfortunate, because this gentleman was under the impression that he was having a child, and he didn't
Yeah,
find out until 3 years later that it's not his child. He broke up with his wife. His wife and him broke up, or the mother of the child and him broke up for 2 years. So that means that the child was 1 year, and then the additional 9 months of being pregnant. So about 2 years of childish things going on here, and then he finds out, or they break up, and then there's 2 more years. So it's a weird timeline, but
yeah,
it is something that I'm worried about. The I would like more details on the situation, but I do think this question is what's he basically saying? What should he do, right? So in my
yeah,
situation, in my opinion, if you're having kids with somebody at that level, you need to vet them. Of course, this whole episode's about vetting. Like, you need to vet the woman to make sure that she's not somebody who would do this to you.
yeah,
So that's part A. Try to prevent this from happening if you're not this person, but this kind of thing happens. You may have you have a deep emotional attachment to somebody, to a child that's not your child. It's going to be hard for you to spend time with this child, if you get like involved legally and everything. And
yeah,
it is something that I would probably tell you to immediately now decide on maybe moving forward with it, and just kind of rejecting it as something that's yours, because it's not your child.
yeah,
It's not your wife. Like, there's nothing about the situation that's yours. You do have a year and your change of attachment to this child, and that's something that's tough to get past. But it's going to be harder to get past 10 years down the road if you keep developing a relationship with this person, this child that's not your child. You're not going to have room to kind of create your own child and move past it, and if that's what you want. Now, there is a disclaimer here. If you are somebody if you do really see yourself in this person's life for the next 20, 30, 40 years, the child, not the woman, there might be a 1% chance that it's worth it for you to kind of try to seek getting invested in the child. And the problem is you won't be able to back that up legally, I think. So it's more of a legal
Yeah.
question. And it says in the second paragraph that you sought legal advice, having your name removed from the birth certificate, etc. So it sounds like you don't want the legal responsibilities of parenting the child, but you are in some way asking if you should be involved because you care deeply about her. You got to be, I think, hard committing on both sides, right? So it's not your child. So I would tell you just don't seek legal responsibility for the child, but also with that, don't seek any parenting responsibility for the child too, and try to move forward.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who wants to go towards giving them parenting, then you probably should seek the legal. You should probably take legal responsibility for it. So I think it's a
Yeah.
hard no, in my opinion. Like move past it, but it is a tough situation. So
Yeah. I can agree with that. I mean, frankly, I would look at this as a blessing. I mean, you guys aren't together. You and the mom aren't even together anymore. The child is 3 years old. You leaving that child's life right now is not going to traumatize the child. All right, she may miss you. She's young, so she may wonder where you went. In 5 years, she's not even going to remember what you look like, right? Like you're not even. You won't even be a memory after a while. She's just too young to have that kind of permanent attachment to you. So it may be tough, and I understand this is a difficult situation, and I can only imagine the emotional thing you must be feeling right now. But at least it's not a woman you're with anymore. So whatever betrayal is there is probably a lot easier to stomach because you guys just aren't even a couple. But I think the way you got to look at it is like, yeah, that's not your child. I don't. I, the emotions are difficult, but the longer you delay severing the relationship, the worse it's going to get, right? And here's the thing: he's already taking steps to legally sever the relationship. To me, that tells me that he where his head's at, right? So it's just
yeah,
like don't wait any longer. Just cut it off. She's going to be okay. Hopefully, the dad is around or something, and you get to know him. But it's not your responsibility, and you're better off the sooner you can just leave the situation. So honestly, I hope that never happens to anybody. But if it does, I hope it happens like this, where it's somebody you're just not even with anymore. And this is really like a fresh start for you. Go start your own family now, man. Like don't
yeah,
and find a woman who would never do something like that because this is I feel that's avoidable. I mean I understand nobody's perfect. You can't really ever truly 100% know someone, but I think if you cultivate your standards and your sexual discipline a little better, that's
100%.
definitely something you can avoid.
And that ties into, I think the way to avoid this really is don't ever sleep with somebody who you're not ready to be a father of their child to. And to me, that's
Yep.
something that if you want to be a father to somebody's child, you have to make sure that you are the father of that person's child, right? So if you're ready to be that person, you can't be doing sexual degeneracy with somebody who you think is doing it with other people. And
Yep.
the fact that you missed that is something a bit of a red flag for your vetting process. So I think you need to kind of reassess like what it is. This might be a blessing for you because now you can kind of move forward, reassess like your process on vetting women, and
Yep.
kind of see what the trust is because it looks like you do have some type of cognitive dissonance here. You're saying that you're taking legal responsibilities to move forward and get your name off the birth certificate, etc. But you also mentioned you still care deeply for your daughter. You're calling her your daughter. Like it's not your daughter, man. You got
Yeah.
to stop using language like that. You're tearing
Yeah.
yourself in half with these half measures. So it's best to move
Yeah.
forward. And if you want to have a daughter, create one with a woman who will only have a daughter with you. So it's partly like
Yeah.
that. But at this point, it's obvious to me that there is some type of split for you. That's why you posted the question, and I respect that. But you've already taken the legal precedence because you don't want the responsibility of this. This is something that, as Dean pointed out, you already are in that headspace. So stop using words like
Yeah.
daughter, my. Don't use words like that. Use words like, hey, my ex girlfriend's daughter. She's da
Yeah.
da da so and so. Say stuff like that more often, and start to kind of move past that. And I think you should probably not even be a person in this person's life at all, because it's going to create
Yeah. I agree.
a buildup of long term resentment. And as Dean pointed out, what about her father? Like her actual father might be in the
Right.
picture, and hopefully he is. And yeah, so just
Yeah.
tough question, but I thought it was interesting when I read it because it's how does this person get into a situation where he's not the father of a child? Is he in the dating phase with
Yeah.
somebody, and then him and a couple other guys are sleeping with this woman, and then she becomes pregnant, and then she just picks the person that's, hey, this guy's the best one of the people I'm with. So, like, how does that
Yeah.
happen? How do you let that happen, man?
I'm sure, yeah, it's exactly like that. I mean, that's why I think the key lesson here. I mean, this guy, is going to do what he's going to do. But anybody listening to this, the key lesson is just like, if you want to know why you shouldn't be participating in the hookups and the fucking dating culture and the stupid crap that we do, this is exactly it. I mean, this is a problem. This is a fake problem that society has created. That something like this is even possible. That there could even be a question of who the woman's. I mean, who the child's father is. The fact that that's even something to be questioned, you know, it's just don't do it. Just stop. Like I said, don't like you said, don't sleep with anybody who you're not comfortable becoming the father of their child. And that should definitely only include women who are only sleeping with you. Let's put it that way. They should. I mean, if you're the kind of guy is like, hey, this girl's sleeping with two other dudes, but I'd be okay getting her pregnant. Like, you gotta look inwards, man. Like something's wrong. You're lost, bro.
Yeah,
So yeah, just
definitely.
don't do that. Don't do shit like this, man. Don't do shit
Sexual
like this.
degeneracy has consequences, right? I mean, this is one of them.
Yeah,
You've embarked in a
absolutely.
sewal journey with somebody who you haven't vetted, and they have had a child with somebody else, and now you've attached yourself to this human, which is gotta
Yeah,
be. I am empathetic towards you, man, because if you think this girl you love is pregnant with the guy with this baby that's yours, I mean, to have that
yeah,
ripped away from you,
yeah.
it's got to feel like shit. It's got to feel really terrible. But um,
Yeah,
do a
but
better
anybody
job, man.
else use
Do a
this
better
as a
job of
lesson.
vetting. Yeah,
Use this as a lesson. Yeah, be better.
yeah. I would like to see an update from you. After this goes live, and I would like to see you say, "Hey, I broke ties, etc. It worked out, like whatever. My ex girlfriend's daughter
Yeah,
is da 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 da." You know what I mean? So next time, change your language. But
right,
I
right.
do want to move into the my girlfriend was some guy's mistress. I thought that was a very interesting one, and it ties into this a little bit. And I do think we
Yeah,
have. I haven't talked to you about this one yet, but I think your opinion and my opinion on this question is going to be a lot different than Reddit's opinion, and I think we're going to be more aligned with each other. I think we're going to be the message that
yep.
people need to hear on this one. So I'll jump into this. I'll read this. So we have on Ask Men Advice. My girlfriend was some guy's mistress. That's the title. I recently found out that when my girlfriend was younger, she was sleeping with a guy that had a girlfriend. I wouldn't have been that shocked by that since cheating happens every second, and she wasn't the one who was cheating. What surprised me was that she felt no remorse, and she said she knew this guy had a long distance girlfriend. She also said she liked the feeling wanted. She liked feeling wanted after getting dumped. I kept saying, but don't you feel bad for the girlfriend who was being cheated on?" And she said, "That's not my problem." So, and goes on to say he's uncomfortable with this. So this is a situation where this guy realizes that his girlfriend was a mistress at one point, and not only that, she kind of doesn't have remorse for it. So, what do you think? What do you think about
Yeah.
this? And take this one away.
So this is great. Yeah, as you said, this is perfectly segued and probably fits the theme of the first conversation we had pretty well too, right? Because the idea is to, if you're going to date somebody, I mean, the previous question is a perfect example of why you should be dating intentionally to find a woman to vet and marry, and not just casually hooking up with people. And now the question is, how do you do that? Well, number one thing is you got to understand the person's character. Right? Um, you know what was crazy when you read this? He says, "I wouldn't have been that shocked by that since cheating happens every second, and she wasn't the one who was cheating." Right? What a crazy ass statement that is. Like, what is that? What does that even mean? So, like, if you're the third party who's enabling the cheating, you're not directly involved. Like, okay, I understand you want to play word games and say you're not the one who's cheating, but like if a girl I'm seeing tells me that personally, that's I'm like I'll walk out and leave. I'll just leaving. I'm not even gonna. I don't even care about what the explanation is. I mean, unless she says I had no idea and it was just an accident. Okay, maybe then I might be willing to listen. But just the fact that this situation even occurred in her life tells me again, when I said you get to know somebody, you hear what they talk about and where their mind's at, you can just learn a lot about them by simple comments. This tells me so much about this person and her principles and her priorities and what she's willing to do, the type of attention that she values. And I would never trust her ever again. I'd never trust her not to do something like that to me, right? And probably much worse because you start. when you build up these, um, it's like when you make a little decision that's like an evil thing to do, the next one becomes easier, right? It just kind of gets worse and worse and worse and worse. If she's willing to do something like this now, she's willing to seek those types of taboo, pleasures and hedonism. Now, maybe she's grown out of it, but I'm not gonna be the guy to sit around and find out, right? Like I'm gonna protect myself from something like this.
Yeah.
So it's insane to me that I mean, I can see in a way why he wants to come to Reddit and ask this question, but I'm just like, I guess personally, I'm just so far beyond even considering something like this that I look at the question and I'm just like, I just want to slap this guy across the face, and I'm just like, why are you, why is you still referring to her as your girlfriend? Like, what are you
Right.
talking about?
And they're still together, probably. I don't. I'm certain they're still
Yeah,
together. I'm certain
probably.
if you click top, Reddit has this thing where it's like hot is the our default one.
Yeah,
So that to me is
yeah,
like that's Reddit's moderators showing you like, oh, this is the best. Look at this. So if you have to sort past that, you click
right.
on top. That's at least Reddit's audience telling you what to look at, which is better than the moderators, but still bad. But if you click old, you're gonna see like you're gonna see better comments. But you got to click old and they're downvoted. But so that's the kind of a little pro tip I think if you're looking at Reddit and
Yeah,
you're seeing a question
yeah,
like this that's fiery, just click old and start to see. Oh, see this guy's thinking what I'm thinking. Right, that's more organic.
yeah,
If you click top
yeah,
again, this is all stuff that you're going to see that they want you to see, and it's like it's a way to keep you down. And I don't want to get conspiratorial here, but it is a way to keep you down. And it's something like telling you
yeah,
to not smoke cigarettes or something like that. Oh, we want to lower your testosterone to be that of a double digit, person who was born in 2015. So anyway, getting back to this because I did a little tangent there. Break up with her immediately. Stop referring to her as your girlfriend. Um, find out who else she's sleeping with currently and figure out like maybe get tested for STDs
yeah,
and stuff
yeah,
because she's definitely cheating on you. It's not a question of is she, it's a question of how many people she's sleeping with currently, excluding you because she's
yeah,
probably not even sleeping with you that much right now. But listen, if you have a girlfriend that even is so laissez whatever laissez faire whatever it is about just she just
yeah,
basically blatantly just says, oh yeah, no problem, I've been if I was totally doing this thing and it's terrible and I don't even care or whatever. Dude, you need to understand that if a woman does this to you, if a woman has done this before, she doesn't want to tell you this stuff. She's not going to be comfortable. So the fact that she's comfortable saying this to you means that it's way worse than
yeah,
what she's telling
exactly.
you.
This is
And
the best of the worst. That's
it's
what she let out, right?
literally, this is like,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
that thought experiment from Ozark. It's like that, hey, this woman was caught stealing from the register. What should I do? And everyone's like, oh, let her. It was a one time thing. Let it, whatever. And then obviously the main character says, it's not the first time that she stole. It's the first time that you caught her stealing. So
yep,
that's kind of where I go with this.
yep,
Luckily, you said
yep,
girlfriend because if you're talking wife, it's different answer as always, and we can refer to 2 episodes ago on that. But it's girlfriend, so that means it's over. It could be over, rather. You could just dump it. But man,
yeah,
listen,
it should be.
this is a blessing to you that you found this out early because I mean, this
Yep,
woman is. You're saying that she is kind of almost bragging about this. Um, no, no, dude. Like she's okay with
yeah,
doing this at all, which means that she's kind of wrapped in her head and saying, "Well, I needed somebody, And the fact that you use language like she wasn't the one cheating, exactly like Dean said, there's two people involved in an affair, and unless the person that doesn't know that it is an affair, which again, that's hard to not know that. It's pretty easy to find that out if you're the
right,
person that's
right.
if you're the affairee or like the cheatee, if you will, like this woman,
Yeah, yeah,
like the mistress,
yeah.
you're gonna know that you're the mistress. Like 99% of the time, you're gonna know. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah,
so easy to
oh
tell.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
so if you're gonna even use language like that, it means that you probably are listening to her, or you're asking your mother, or you're asking her sister, or you're asking like somebody that's not us about this, and they've convinced you to propagandize you to kind of use language like she's not even the one that cheats, and cheating happens every second. Dude, what are you
yeah,
damage controlling, bro? That's not normal. Do not
yeah,
normalize cheating. Do not normalize her not being complicit in this. Do not normalize
yeah.
her being still your girlfriend. Do not normalize Reddit being the place you go to for this kind of crap. Get out of that
Right.
situation. Go to the gym. Get locked in. I'm actually, I'm getting, bro. I'm getting like a little bit blood.
Get to the gym, delete Facebook, get a lawyer.
I'm
No,
getting
but here's
riled
the
up.
thing.
Get involved. Get involved. I'm
You
getting
know
riled
what
up.
made me think too? Even just the way she responded when he like confronted her with like, "Hey, don't you at least feel bad about this?" you know how her response is, it's not my problem. That's like defensiveness. That's the feminism inside of her that teaches her that she can do no wrong and she should never be held accountable and everything she does is good and fine. She is like totally poisoned. Like her brain is mush at this point. There's no possibility she's ever going to accept responsibility for anything. For if she can't even admit that this was like an evil thing to do, right away, right? Like I here's the thing. People make mistakes and you look back on it, you're like, God, I was such an idiot. I just hate myself for that. And like that's one perspective. That's the perspective we should all have, right? But if she looks back on it and even to this day, like for more than about 5 minutes after the thing happened, if she's looking back on it and saying, yeah, well, it's not my problem. I'm just out there getting laid, having fun. Guys do it all the time. Why can't I? Yeah, you know, like just crap like that, this feminism brain mush, just talking point nonsense. Dude, imagine what she's gonna be like when you're married and you know your kid's crying and you haven't changed the diaper in 2 days, you know, and she just lets it go because she knows that she's gonna force you to do it. I mean, it's like the ultimate shit test is what this is, right? It's the ultimate suicide bomber kamikaze move that she's doing. Like she's either going to torpedo the relationship to find out if you have any balls, or she's going to just walk right over you and she'll just know that she has you in her back pocket for the rest of your freaking life. Like this, this is over, man. This is like the Twin Towers have fallen, bro. Like this is done. You gotta escape the situation immediately, man.
Yeah, this is done, and I think there's a case to be made. Like, I know we're both kind of really aggressive on just breaking up there. If she said to you, like, a completely different context, if she had said, like, hey, this guy I dated, first guy I ever dated, he was in college at the time, and I started dating him, and I found out that I actually had a long distance girlfriend. I found that out like a little bit halfway, and then I immediately broke up with him, and I was devastated. Completely different situation than what's going on now.
Right,
But
right.
if it's a little bit in between, and if it's, hey, I found out this guy was, had a girlfriend, I kept dating him, and I thought, I was trying to convince him to break up with the girl, and I just kept dating him, and I feel terrible about it. I feel ashamed. I should have broken up with him instantly. Can't believe that I was like the other woman. I don't know, but I just kept doing it,
Yeah,
and I think that was before I found religion or before I found out like what a good human being, whatever it is. Red
yeah,
flag still because there was that she has that dog in her, but at least she's trying and attempting to uh, resolve. What's the term? She's trying.
grow and change.
I'm thinking of a specific word that's kind of like.
Repent.
Thank you. She's trying to repent here, and it's an 8-second CC, but it happens. And repentance. Anyway, so
Yeah.
she's trying to move forward. So that's something that where you could say, okay, I can work with that. I could take that and work with that. Think of it like you're an employee, right? And somebody calls in sick and then admits to you they weren't sick. It's like, okay, I can work with you telling me the truth. I can work with that. But if somebody just doesn't show up to work, they're done. They're gone, right? So
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
not like,
Yep.
oh, anybody who's ever cheated ever, don't date them. It's more like, okay, if this person is showing no remorse, she's gone. If she's telling you that it's not cheating, she's gone. If it's a consistent pattern, she's gone. So, but yeah, if it's the first case where she doesn't know about it and like, or she's embarrassed about it or she's thinks it's a bad thing, then we can work with it. But dude, this is a lighthouse. This is like almost like a. I'm now trying to get a meta conversation with myself and with Dean here, thinking about why you even posted this. Is it to validate the fact that you're now stating other people's property? Is it to validate the fact that you're
Right.
you're in some the used car? Like what's going on? Like what are we happy about? Like what are we doing on Reddit here talking about this? Are we asking for an excuse to date her? Like what are we doing?
Yeah, I think the meta reasoning, what I read from this is this guy just, and I think many men fall into this where this is probably like the only woman in his life who's ever showed him any attention, right? Or like the most attractive woman that he's ever been with, and he doesn't want to lose it just because of that, right? Like this is simply a lack of self-worth, a lack of standards. That's why you and I have such a strong reaction to it because we've grown well beyond that. And I'm not going to say I was always like that. I definitely wasn't. I made plenty of terrible mistakes when it comes to women, but when you start to develop self-respect and you know what you're worth as a man, these are just not even a question. Like it's not even something you'd even think about. So he clearly lacks that. He clearly lacks that type of self-respect, and maybe he lacks a father figure to beat that into him or whatever.
Right.
But that's how I read this. Is like he's afraid to be lonely. That's the key right there. He's looking for validation from women. He doesn't want to be alone, and so he's almost thinking about overlooking something that's just totally beyond the
It's a
pale.
it's a deal breaker. Yeah, he's overlooking a deal breaker.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yep.
anyway, I think that's a good place to end it. And everything, I think everything kind of wrapped into each other as it always does, kind of in a good way, because we talked about
Yeah.
vetting process, maintaining relationships, segueing into what about women? Like, should you be friends with women or not? Perfect question was asked on Reddit,
Right.
and then segueing that into kind of maintaining situations like what about the father, et cetera. So everything kind of wrapped into itself, and this is the perfect way to end it because this is kind of it's all tied together. It's all connected, and this is
Yeah.
basically
I
the
agree.
final stage of no, dude, you're done. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
would you like to add anything
All
else?
right. Yeah. Let's see. No, I think that was good. Just be a sponge, be the example, and people will come. You'll attract them. So
Yep.
we're trying to attract you to this video,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and it worked. If you're still here, then
Yeah, and I
it
think I
definitely
think
works.
if you made it this far, I think it would be interesting if you posted some comments about the question. Like when I said I have a list of questions internally, I think a good thought experiment for you would be, hey, to the viewer, what kind of questions would I be asking somebody if I want to vet them and see if they're worth being a friend with? So put that in the comments, and we'll
Yeah.
look forward to seeing you guys next week on Maneuver Life Radio.